Hi, Music 189! Woohoo! Congratulations! You finished Module 1 of the course. At the end of each module, what I'm going to do is produce a little video for you to wrap up content, so summarize content, as well as address any issues I may have been receiving via email. This week, I didn't receive too many questions about content. I received questions mainly regarding the technical requirements for the course. So if you have any, please shoot them my way. So what I'm going to do is then just summarize what you should feel comfortable with now that you've completed Module 1. So as our little module wrap-up paragraph says here, if you're watching this, that means you've completed not only your introductory activity, but your first activity within Module 1 and 4 assignments, one of which was rehearsing musical terminology, and the other 3 were listening guide quizzes that you should have completed through the Norton Inquisitive Study Space. By reading your textbook, you were introduced to multiple musical elements. So by musical elements, I mean rhythm, melody, harmony, texture, instrumentation. I also tried to give you some supporting materials as your professor of the course. Then you moved on to the earliest time periods of music, the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. So when historians begin to discuss the advent of a Western art music, they usually begin with the Middle Ages and move all the way up to today. We are actually not going to return to the Middle Ages or Renaissance for the rest of the course, but I thought it was important to begin contextualizing music historically at its earliest notated point. I also like to begin in the Middle Ages and Renaissance because this is our earliest notated evidence of certain musical elements, specifically rhythm and texture. So what I've done here as part of your module wrap-up is clarified certain aspects of rhythm and texture. So although nobody had any questions via email, I certainly do get many questions teaching this course face-to-face, and they often relate to meter and texture. So if you see meter here, you were introduced to 2 primary considerations of meter. Firstly, grouping beats together, and we group beats together into 2s or 3s, which means duple or triple, and then of course you can multiply the 2s into quadruple, etc. Same thing with our triple. And then you were also introduced to subdividing or dividing the beats further. So not grouping them together, but dividing them. And we do this by referring to the music as being compound, right? Or simple. If we're dividing into 2s, we say this is simple. And if we're dividing into 3s, we say it is compound. All right, so the best way, the only thing I can really tell you about meter, practice makes perfect. So the more examples you have to listen to different types of meter, the better it will, or the easier it will get for you to hear it. So I've included 2 examples of a simple duple or quadruple, however you want to regard it, meter here, simple triple, and then I wanted to show you that you can always switch meters. Sometimes composers do this quite frequently. They will actually shift meters from bar to bar. We will encounter music like that. So this is a switch from triple to duple meter depending on the verse versus the chorus. I gave you some examples of compound duple or quadruple meter, and I wanted to put a disclaimer here. You may want to hear it as simple triple. You're like, I hear 3s, but do you hear 3s as larger groupings or subdividing? So the larger grouping of both of these videos would be in a 2 feel or 4 feel. So we say duple or quadruple, but when we begin to subdivide those beats, what we get are 3s. So I think they're 2 great examples. If you have any questions regarding rhythm, always know that the pieces that you have to know for your LGs, each LG, if rhythm is pertinent, you will have a separate little sub video to watch explaining the metrical patterns to you. All right, for those of you who are still a little iffy about texture, you know that there are three primary types: monophony, homophony, and polyphony. So I gave you some examples here. I wanted to point out, though, more so than not, a piece will feature multiple textures, just as you could feature multiple meters. That's not necessary, but more often than not for texture, you will feature multiple textures. So we have a monophonic example. So if we're using it as an adjective, we say monophonic. If it's a noun, monophony. Remember, this is one main melody with accompaniment. In both of these, so in this first video, the chant, we have one main melody, no accompaniment, but we do have multiple voices. But it's important to note that the multiple voices are in no way creating harmony or accompaniment. And this is just a solo piece for an instrument called the oboe. Here's some homophonic examples. So this is also one main melody, which makes it similar to monophony, but we're going to add harmony to it. So if any of you were in general chorus in high school, you'll note that you were singing all together, but you had a different part. That's because mainly you were singing probably homophonic music and homorhythmic music if you were moving in the same rhythm. A lot of popular music features a homophonic texture. I like to tell my students that if you can hear one main melody, but you hear multiple pitches creating a simultaneous sonority or harmony, it's probably homophony. If it's hard to pick out a one main melody, this is probably polyphony. So I gave you two examples here, one instrumental, one vocal, of multiple melodies happening at once. This means that there's not one dominant melody plus accompaniment, but we have vying melodies. They all want to be just as important as one another. One doesn't rise to the top, so you can hear it and sing it back. All right, and then I give you an example of a piece that actually includes homophony, but then also polyphony, so you can hear the difference within one video. So that's all I have in terms of content. If you have any questions, please do let me know regarding the specific musical elements, the time periods of music for the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, the genres that you were introduced to. I should note, actually, that we were introduced to these genres once again to feed in to understanding earlier instances of rhythm and texture. So for chant, that is monophonic. And if you think about earliest origins of music, it makes sense that it's one dominant melody. And this monophonic chant doesn't feature accompaniment. But then we also have our earliest instances of polyphony in the Middle Ages, which is through the genre of organum. So people started to experiment with adding multiple melodies together. Then you move to the Renaissance with another instance of polyphony. So you can hear how intricate composers get by the 15th into the 16th centuries. So our Renaissance period of music in adding multiple melodies together. We also have a progression from non-metric music beginning in the Middle Ages to a metered music. So we begin to consider music in twos and threes by the Renaissance. And our earliest instances of what we call time signatures, or how to measure meter in a notated way in music, happen in the Renaissance. All right, the only other thing I want to remind you about, let me move my head out the way, is your final project. I know, it's only been 1 week. How can you start thinking about a final? But your final will be much easier to complete by the deadline if you begin working on it now. So please check out your final project. There's also an accompanying video of me explaining that. It's due Friday, June 24th, so we want to go ahead and complete that as soon as possible. Have any questions? Please contact me. I look forward to hearing from you. Take care. Bye.